Okay, because I'll start then.
All right,
Sure.
that's great.
Okay, so we're on imagination, the workshop of the mind, the fifth step toward riches. The imagination is literally the workshop wherein are fashioned all plans created by man. The impulse, the desire, is given shape, form, and action through the aid of the imaginative faculty of the mind. It has been said that man can create anything which he can imagine. Of all the ages of civilization, this is the most favorable for the development of the imagination because it is an age of rapid change. On, on every hand, one may contact stimuli which develop the imagination. Through the aid of his imaginative faculty, man has discovered and harnessed more of nature's forces during the past 50 years than during the entire history of the human race previous to that time. He has conquered the air so completely that the birds are a poor match for him in flying. He has harnessed the ether and made it serve as a means of instantaneous communication with any part of the world. He has analyzed and weighed the sun at a distance of millions of miles and has determined, through the aid of imagination, the elements of which it consists. He has discovered that his own brain is both a broadcasting and a receiving station for the vibration of thought, and he is beginning now to learn how to make practical use of this discovery. He has increased the speed of locomotion until he may now travel at a speed of more than 300 miles an hour. The time will soon come when a man may breakfast in New York and lunch in San Francisco. Man's only limitation within reason lies in his development and use of his imagination. He has not yet reached the apex of development in the use of his imaginative faculty. He has merely discovered that he has an imagination and has commenced to use it in a very elementary way. Two forms of imagination. The imaginative faculty functions in two forms. One is known as synthetic imagination and the other as creative imagination. Synthetic imagination. Through this faculty, one may arrange old concepts, ideas, or plans into new combinations. This faculty creates nothing. It merely works with the material of experience, education, and observation with which it is fed. It is the faculty used most by the inventor, with the exception of the one who draws upon the creative imagination when he cannot solve his problem through synthetic imagination. Creative imagination. Through the faculty of creative imagination, the finite mind of man has direct communication with infinite intelligence. It is the faculty through which hunches and inspirations are received. It is by this faculty that all basic or new ideas are handed over to man. It is through this faculty that thought vibrations from the minds of others are received. It is through this faculty that one individual may tune in or communicate with the subconscious minds of other men. The creative imagination works automatically in the manner described in subsequent pages. This faculty functions only when the conscious mind is vibrating at an exceedingly rapid rate, as for example, when the conscious mind is stimulated through the emotion of a strong desire. The creative faculty becomes more alert, more receptive to vibrations from the sources mentioned in proportion to its development through use. This statement is significant. Ponder over it before passing on. Keep in mind as you follow these principles that the entire story of how one may convert desire into money cannot be told in one statement. The story will be complete only when one has mastered, assimilated, and begun to make use of all the principles. The great leaders of business, industry, finance, and the great artists, musicians, poets, and writers became great because they developed the faculty of creative imagination. Both the synthetic and creative faculties of imagination become more alert with use, just as any muscle or organ of the body develops through use. Desire is only a thought, an impulse. It is nebulous and ephemeral. It is abstract and of no value until it has been transformed into its physical counterpart. While the synthetic imagination is the one which will be used most frequently, in the process of transforming the impulse of desire into money, you must keep in mind the fact that you may face circumstances and situations which demand use of the creative imagination as well. Your imaginative faculty may have become weak through inaction. It can be revived and made alert through use. This faculty does not die, though it may become quiescent through lack of use. Center your attention for the time being on the development of the synthetic imagination, because this is the faculty which you will use more often in the process of converting desire into money. Transformation of the intangible impulse of desire into the tangible reality of money calls for the use of a plan or plans. These plans must be formed with the aid of the imagination and mainly with the synthetic faculty. Read the entire book through, then come back to this chapter and begin at once to put your imagination to work on the building of a plan or plans for the transformation of your desire into money. Detailed instructions for the building of plans have been given in almost every chapter. Carry out the instructions best suited to your needs, reduce your plan to writing, and if you have not already done so, the moment you complete this, you will have definitely given concrete form to the intangible desire. Read the preceding sentence once more. Read it aloud, very slowly, and as you do, remember that the moment you reduce the statement of your desire and take a plan for its realization to writing, you have actually taken the first of a series of steps which will enable you to convert the thought into its physical counterpart. The earth on which you live, you, yourself, and every other material thing are the result of evolutionary change through which microscopic bits of matter have been organized and arranged in an orderly fashion. Moreover, and this statement is of stupendous importance, this earth, every one of the billions of individual cells in your body, and every atom of matter began as an intangible form of energy. Desire is thought impulse. Thought impulses are forms of energy. When you begin with the thought impulse, desire, to accumulate money, you are drafting into your service the same stuff that nature used in creating this earth and every material form in the universe, including the body and brain in which the thought impulses function. As far as science has been able to determine, the entire universe consists of but two elements, matter and energy. Through the combination of energy and matter has been created everything perceptible to man, from the largest star which floats in the heavens down to and including man himself. You are now engaged in the task of trying to profit by nature's method. You are sincerely, earnestly, we hope, trying to adapt yourself to nature's laws by endeavoring to convert desire into its physical or monetary equivalent. You can do it. It has been done before. You can build a fortune through the aid of laws which are immutable. But first, you must become familiar with these laws and learn to use them. Through repetition and by approaching the description of these principles from every conceivable angle, the author hopes to reveal to you the secret through which every great fortune has been accumulated. Strange and paradoxical as it may seem, the secret is not a secret. Nature herself advertises it in the earth on which we live, the stars, the planets suspended within our view, in the elements above and around us, in every blade of grass and every form of life within our vision. Nature advertises this secret in the terms of biology in the conversion of a tiny cell so small that it may be lost on the point of a pin into the human being now reading this line. The conversion of desire into its physical equivalent is certainly no more miraculous. Do not become discouraged if you do not fully comprehend all that has been stated. Unless you have long been a student of the mind, it is not to be expected that you will assimilate all that is in this chapter upon a first reading, but you will in time make good progress. The principles which follow will open the way for understanding of imagination. Assimilate that which you understand as you read this philosophy for the first time. Then when you reread and study it, you will discover that something has happened to clarify it and give you a broader understanding of the whole. Above all, do not stop nor hesitate in your study of these principles until you have read the book at least 3 times, for then you will not want to stop. Someone else like to take over?
I can have a read. How to make practical use of imagination. Ideas are the beginning points of all fortunes. Ideas are products of the imagination. Let us examine a few well-known ideas which have yielded huge fortunes with the hope that these illustrations will convey definite information concerning the method by which imagination may be used in accumulating riches. The Enchanted Kettle. 50 years ago, an old country doctor drove down, hitched his horse, quietly slipped into a drug store by the back door, and began dickering with the young drug clerk. His mission was destined to yield great wealth to many people. It was destined to bring the South the most far-flung benefit since the Civil War. For more than an hour behind the prescription counter, the old doctor and clerk talked in low tones, then the doctor left. He went out to the buggy and brought back a large old-fashioned kettle, a big wooden paddle used for stirring the contents of the kettle, and deposited them in the back of the store. The clerk inspected the kettle, reaching into his inside pocket, took out a roll of bills and handed it over to the doctor. The roll contained exactly $500, the clerk's entire savings. The doctor handed over a small slip of paper on which was written a secret formula. The words on that small slip of paper were worth a king's ransom, but not to the doctor. Those magic words were needed to start the kettle to boiling, but neither the doctor nor the young clerk knew what fabulous fortunes were destined to flow from that kettle. The old doctor was glad to sell the outfit for $500. The money would pay off his debts and give him freedom of mind. The clerk was taking a big chance by staking his entire life savings on a mere scrap of paper and an old kettle. He never dreamed his investment would start a kettle to overflowing with gold that would surpass the miraculous performance of Aladdin's lamp. What the clerk really purchased was an idea. The old kettle and the wooden paddle and the secret message on the slip of paper were incidental. The strange performance of that kettle began to take place after the new owner mixed with the secret instructions an ingredient of which the doctor knew nothing. Read this story carefully. Give your imagination a test. See if you can discover what it was the young man added to the secret message that caused the kettle to overflow with gold. Remember as you read that this is not a story from Arabian Nights. Here you have a story of facts stranger than fiction, facts that began in the form of an idea. Let us take a look at the vast fortunes of gold this idea has produced. It has paid and still pays huge fortunes to men and women all over the world who distribute the contents of this kettle to millions of people. The old kettle is now one of the world's largest consumers of sugar, thus providing jobs of a permanent nature to thousands of men and women engaged in growing sugarcane and in refining and marketing sugar. The old kettle consumes annually millions of glass bottles, providing jobs to huge numbers of glass workers. The old kettle gives employment to an army of clerks, stenographers, copywriters, and advertising experts throughout the nation. It has brought fame and fortune to scores of artists who have created magnificent pictures describing the product. The old kettle has converted a small southern city to a business capital of the South, where it now benefits directly or indirectly every business and practically every resident in the city. The influence of this idea now benefits every civilized country in the world, pouring out a continuous stream of gold to all who touch it. Gold from the kettle built and maintains one of the most prominent colleges of the South, where thousands of young people receive the training essential for success. The old kettle has done other marvelous things all through the World Depression, when factories, banks, and business houses were folding up and quitting by the thousands. The owner of this enchanted kettle went marching on, giving continuous employment to an army of men and women all over the world, and paying out extra portions of gold to those who long ago had faith in the idea. If the product of that old brass kettle could talk, it would tell thrilling tales of romance in every language, romances of love, romances of business, romances of professional men and women who are daily being stimulated by it. The author is sure of at least one such romance, for he was part of it, and it all began not far from the very spot which the drug clerk purchased the old kettle. It was here that the author met his wife, and it was she who first told him of the enchanted kettle. It was the product of that kettle that they were drinking when he asked her to accept him for better or worse. Now that you know the contents of the enchanted kettle it is a world-famous drink, it is fitting that the author confess that the home city of the drink supplied him with a wife, also that the drink itself provides him with stimulation of thought without intoxication, and thereby it serves to give the refreshment of mind which an author must have to do his best work. Whoever you are, wherever you may live, whatever occupation you may be engaged in, just remember in the future, every time you see the words Coca-Cola, that his vast empire of wealth and influence grew out of a single idea, and that the mysterious ingredients the drug clerk, as a candler, mixed with the secret formula was imagination. Stop and think of that for a moment. Remember also that the 13 steps to riches described in this book were the media through which the influence of Coca-Cola has been extended to every city, town, village, and crossroads of the world, and that any idea you may create has as bold and meritorious as Coca-Cola has the possibility of duplicating the stupendous record of this worldwide thirst killer. Truly, thoughts are things, and their scope of operation is the world itself. All right. Who says Napoleon Hill doesn't talk about energy becoming things in Think and Grow Rich? I like the way in the very first sentence he says that the imagination is literally the workshop and that we can form anything. Well, it says that man can create anything which he can imagine. And he always used that saying, whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe it can achieve. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, the first part of that chapter was really quite deep, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I don't remember reading a lot of this. Isn't that strange?
Same here.
The difference between the synthetic imagination and the creative, and that you're going to use the synthetic the most, and man, that really was encouraging to me. There's so many encouraging things in here. That your imagination, it gets rusty or whatever through lack of use, but it never dies, and you can bring it back. And I went, wow, is that good news?
Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
Yeah. That is good to know. Just all we have to do is practice using it and remember to use it, because we forget to even use it. We forget to, stop and think, what should I do in this moment? Or what would be the best course of action here? We just plow through.
Yeah.
And when you think about wanting to change your paradigm, that's when you do use the creative imagination to create your new paradigm.
That's right.
Okay, and on line 57 it says, and I'm wondering if you guys have a thought on what it's saying here. It says something about it's described in subsequent pages. It says the creative imagination works automatically in the manner described in the subsequent pages. Okay, I don't know that I caught on. Or maybe did we not get to it?
Maybe, but I'm kind of thinking along the lines of, how you get, and he talks about it here too somewhere, when you get the hunch, when you've been focusing on something that you want to accomplish, but you're just not quite sure of the next step, and then you'll go off and do something else, and you'll get a sudden inspiration of thought or an idea or a clarity.
Yeah, maybe.
That's one way that creative imagination works.
Yeah. And doesn't that happen all the time? I mean, I think back, like how answers came to me, like out of the blue.
Yeah.
Or I'd rack my brains on a problem, and when I would ask the question out loud to someone, poof, the answer comes.
Yeah, so maybe that's the key, and I've heard that said before. Well, we know you have to ask before you can receive, and ask and it is given. Whatever you ask for, you shall receive, it even says in the Bible. So maybe we need to ask the question to ourselves.
Yeah, maybe we need to ask more questions.
Yeah. Because we ponder it over, but we don't just ask the question straight out like you do to a friend.
At the bottom of the first page, I wrote, it says, the time will soon come when a man can breakfast in New York and lunch in San Francisco. And I wrote, done.
Yeah.
Because we can.
Yeah.
The part about the train going over 300 miles an hour, that's already here. It was like, really? Way back then? I mean, I know it is now in China, but...
Yeah, so when was this, 1937 or something?
Yeah, and then it was revised in 1960. But even then, I was like, what train went 300 miles an hour back then?
Must have been one. I really like the way he sneaks this in about the brain being a broadcasting and receiving station of thought. He's talking about how we've been able to measure the sun, and we've harnessed the ether through radio, and then he says, and our brain is a broadcasting and receiving station, and then we've got the speed of the locomotion. Like, it just slips it in there in between other completely irrelevant things.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. And then he talks about that's one of the ways that we use the creative imagination, by tapping into other people's subconscious minds.
Yeah, exactly. That was a big point, wasn't it? It's like something that I kind of forgot about. And and I was kind of surprised that he said you have to read the book at least 3 times.
Yeah, and I would stress the word at least.
Yeah, hey?
I mean, every time we read it, there's something, like you were just saying, Cheryl, you don't even remember this bit. And next time there'll be something else that we weren't ready for this time.
Mm-hmm.
That question about things that we haven't covered yet. After imagination, it actually goes into organized planning. Then you've got decision, and then you've got persistence. And I think what he's trying to, you've got the power of the mastermind as well, and the mystery of well, he calls it sex transmutation, but later on he describes transmutation as the change of one emotion, altering one emotion into another. And then it goes into the subconscious mind and then the brain. But in reality, chapter 12, the subconscious mind, is kind of one of the biggest keys, really. The thing is that I think what he's talking about is that when you start going through all of this, you got to recall, you got to remember and keep in mind that it is a synergistic theory, practice, that even though each individual part is of importance, it's like, and he describes this in the Chicago lectures, he says, it's like making a cake, or the editor describes it actually, in that, you know, flour is important, sugar is important, your vanilla essence is important, and everything else. But you can't make a vanilla cake until you put everything together. I think that's what he's trying to imply, is that up to this point, we've been given a lot of interesting information on certain parts which we can use on their individual parts, but we don't have all of the information sufficient for full success until we get everything together. And I was saying that I have come across people who haven't read the full book, they've only read part of it, and they've become quite successful. But the reason for it is because the other parts they already possess. So you could read half of the book and you've already got a firm understanding of how, I don't know, like you've got a firm understanding of how to change your mind. And whilst I've been working at the hotel, I've been speaking to a lot of people there, just out of interest really, because they're all, the majority of people that come into the hotel are millionaires. And when you speak to them, they have this idea, you know, it's like you say to them, good morning, how are you? They never say, oh, I'm well. They say, perfect, brilliant, excellent, enthusiastic. You know, they're always going with that little bit of extra. Whereas if I speak to colleagues, they'll say, yeah, it's all right, it's a good day, you know, I'm all right, it's not too bad, it's a weekend, so I'm not working, almost finished work. Whereas they, you know, the people that are successful, they don't talk that way. So it gives me an indication that they've already got a form of positive subconscious. Their subconscious mind is already linked to the good side, shall we say, you know, it's linked to the light rather than the dark. So anyone that's actually got that initially, then they just need a few other bits. But if you're working your way through the book, which is why he says you've got to read it at least 3 times, is the fact that the more you read it, the more you get through it, and the more you get from it. I was saying to Nick that it's the 3rd time that I've had to buy the book, because I gave the 2nd copy away again. But this one I'm keeping, it's a keeper. Mm-hmm. And I've started reading through it. And I looked at how far I'd got through in about a week, because I've been reading either a chapter or as much of a chapter as I could, especially with organized planning, because it's such a big chapter. I broke it down into 3 parts, and I've actually got through it quite quick, which the first time round I didn't. It took me about a month to go through even half the book, whereas this time I've got through the book in about a week. And it makes me realize that I'm beginning to understand more, and my success consciousness is much better than it used to be, especially with the way that I think. I catch myself saying things that I would never have said before. And I think that's what he's implying, is that when you get to this point, and he says, you know, there's certain parts that you realize as you go through it that we haven't read yet, is the assimilation of all the information to get your mind into the correct vibration to start getting exactly what you want. And it's that sense of the book in total, when you get everything together, is to orientate your thought process. So you're actually working with the law of cause and effect, the law of attraction. And that is what the book does. It gets you using the law of attraction unconsciously without you even knowing it, by using the principles that he's telling you to apply. So even though a lot of people, you get to the point of persistence, about persisting, you're using that, the belief of faith already, because if you're persisting, you're going to get there. And with the imagination, you're actually creating an image in your mind, a picture. What is it that he uses? Maxwell Maltz uses the words, the theater in your mind, where you are everything, and you're using that theater in your mind to create the picture that you want in any way that you want it. And by using the 6 steps in the chapter of faith, you continually reaffirming your faith in your vision of what you have in your imagination. So your imagination is the creative part, whereas the visualization is seeing yourself in there. And by the continuous use of your imagination, it's like a muscle. The more you use it, they get better it gets, and you become more and more specific with the more detail. And I think that's what he's trying to say, is that you need to continue reading it, and you need to go through it, so you instill more belief in yourself that the principles he's telling us in the book do actually work. I think that's what he's trying to say in a long-winded way.
And I think another element too is that we have a chance to practice it, and when you actually do it and then see the results, it really cements it. And then when you go back and read again, you have an experience of it that's actually happened in your life, and so then you're more open to absorbing more, and then you can go and use that, and then the next time you come back and get the next layer. Yeah,
it gives you, because of the impact you have, like you said, Nick, of you're getting something that actually works. You see the physical representation of what you've been thinking, then you have more faith in the principles themselves. And because you've got more faith, when you start going through the book again, your faith increases. So the more you read it, the stronger it becomes, and things start to gravitate towards you. You magnetize things a lot better towards you, particularly what you want rather than what you don't want.
That's a really good point, Christos, about the increasing the faith the more you read it.
Yeah.
That's very important. And I never thought about that before.
Yeah, especially when like he's saying, when he's talking about mastering it, assimilating it, and beginning to make use of it. I reckon the making use of it, and then when you go back and read again and you go, oh yeah, that's right, because all of us have had that little hunch, and we've had things starting to happen. So now our faith is way higher than the last time we read it.
That's right. That's right. It's that continuous. If you imagine it as a circle, you write everything in a circle, and you start at the beginning and you say, right, you take that, you take that, you take that, you take that, and then you get to the end and you say, right, well, you begin to realize that something's changed. So when you go through it again, you begin to realize that there's consistent changes every time you reread a given chapter. And by the use of your imagination, you're building that picture of exactly what you want. And the more round you take it, and the more you build on that vision of what you want, you solidifying it. And when he talks about the vibration of mind, and every brain is a transmitting and a receiving station. I mean, that's quite obvious. He's talking about telepathy. And I do believe that, I personally believe that that is possible, because, we've all experienced it. It's mother's instinct is the best one, I think, that I've come across as yet, where a mom feels, something's wrong with a child. And that's a massive emotional connection from the mother to the child. And if you've got it the other way around as well, then the child gets that emotional connection. They've got that feeling as well, something's wrong. And it's the emotion that creates that connection, which is why when he speaks about faith and he talks about, when you visualize something, you've got to see it, believe it, and feel it, is because it builds on that vibration, that what you're sending out becomes extremely strong. And the consistent reading of it builds that strength of belief, of vision, of emotional content in your vision, and particularly the belief of it. And you'll begin to see little things happening. But the strange thing is that you've got to be aware of them, because if you're not, you'll miss them. Because a lot of the things that will happen are very, very small, and you'll never even realize that they've occurred. And you'll miss the affirming of what you're learning is actually going into your subconscious mind.
Good point.
And I think that's why he's put it, he's left subconscious towards the end, because at the time when it was written, there wasn't a lot of books out. A lot of the books on the subconscious came out much later. And up to that point, everybody was talking about mind science and how the mind works. There was a little bit about vibration. There was a lot about data. And there was quite a bit about visualization, especially as Genevieve Perrin describes it. And Napoleon Hill was the first one to actually assimilate all of those ideas, put them into one block, and to turn around and tell people, you've actually got a subconscious mind. And the acceptance of it is not possible until you go through the book. Because as you go through it, you go through different bits, you see the imagination, and then it tells you, by the way, you've actually got two parts to your brain, to your mind. One is this, the other one is your subconscious. And that's when you begin to accept it, or a little bit, and then you go through it again. Now, the second time round, you've already used it partly because of the affirmations. You've changed part of your subconscious programming, and your affirmations are beginning to work. So you're thinking to yourself, hold on a second, there's got to be something in this. Now, because we already know this, we're not realizing what we're actually doing that by rereading this for the second time all the way through. And when you realize it properly and you look at your life now compared to the first time you read it, I will guarantee, I will put my month's wages on it, that you've already seen a difference. It might be a minor one, but I don't believe so. I believe it's quite a major one. And it's not just in yourself. Other people have noticed it as well. Because either people have moved away from you, or people have been attracted to you, and the people have been attracted to you have a greater interest in what you're doing, or you're attracting people that have the same interests as you. And I think that's what he's getting at when he says about that little part on the, I can't remember what he says there, sorry, about the, you've got to, we haven't actually reached everything. I haven't got the original, I've got the book, that's why. And it's the purpose of saying to you, don't stop reading. There's more to learn yet. You've got to persist. And that's why the next chapter is decision. You've got to decide to continue reading it. And when you get to persistence, it's saying to you, well done. You've persisted this one, now persist even further. And then the rest of them start coming in as well. That's just my thought.
I agree. I also like the one he says in here in line 30, man's only limitation within reason lies in the development and use of his imagination. And because later in the chapter he explains to us that desire is energy, thought form is energy, and energy creates matter. So if we're only limited by our imagination and everything that we conjure into our imagination can become matter, that tells me that I can think big.
Yeah.
The bigger I think, the bigger I can create. So when that faith starts to build of the whole process and the truth of all of this coming together, that's when we can start imagining bigger. You know, we can create big things in the world. We can help millions of people to change their lives. We don't have to think that we can only help 20 people. If we want to help millions, we can help millions. It's just we're limited only by our imagination. If we imagine it, it can happen.
Isn't that like a name of a book, The Magic of Thinking Big?
Yes, brilliant book too, by the way. Highly recommend it.
David Schwartz.
It's got lots of good processes and things in it too.
Yeah.
A lot of good what?
Processes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What's the other one? The Joseph Murphy one, Nick. Which one's that one again?
The Power of Your Conscious Mind.
Yeah, another good one.
That's another good one. That's got processes as well, the way that he explains it. All right, they're quite extended affirmations, which remind me of incantations, the same ones that Tony Robbins does, you know, the extended affirmation incantation with the physical movement, which makes you feel as well. But again, it's like Nick says, the magic of thinking big and the power of your subconscious mind are absolutely brilliant books, especially for someone that has these doubts about the subconscious mind. And it's strange because a lot of people do. But it's you're right, Nick, and it's that thing. You know, you can either think of being, what is it? I can either think of helping one person, or I can think of helping 1 billion people. The thought is exactly the same.
Yep.
It's no more energy. No, it makes no difference where I think of 1 or 1 billion, and that is all the way through.
Yep.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It is. It is, and that's why I like the way our faith is building, because the bigger our faith is, the bigger our
ability.
Yeah, and the bigger things we can create.
Yeah.
He talks about reducing the plan into writing, or our idea even into writing. And he says, and once you've done this, you've actually taken the first step in a series of steps which will enable you to convert the thought into its physical counterpart. So every time we have a new idea, and a lot of the mentors out there say this, write it down. And it's like asking the universe, or telling the universe, this is what I want, telling your subconscious mind, this is what I want, seeing it in writing, feeling the connection between writing it to your brain. There's so many reasons to write it down. I'm not writing anything down anymore. I'm writing everything down, because I've gone back through, like I've just moved, going back through paperwork and things I've written down in the past that are now a reality. Other stuff that I may not have written down, which I can't think of, but I'm sure this is the truth, that things I haven't written down haven't transpired.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, this is Callie.
Hey, Callie.
This is a great topic. I'm glad you brought that up. It just kind of a question just popped up in my mind. about, you know, writing down, which actually I get to do with my non-dominant hand now. I get to really get to be artistic with that. But I wonder if that also, that the writing it down slows the mind down. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And it probably focuses it as well.
Interesting. Okay.
I've been doing my affirmations, and in my Bob Proctor coaching, one of the women said, you know, do write it out like 100. She writes hers out 100 times, and that's what I've started to do. I came up with an affirmation, one, and it's one line. And you're right. As I write it, you know, I add certain words, because as I'm writing, like, I am a confident, you know, I'll say I am a very confident, but by the time I'm done writing, it's just confident. But it does. You slow down and you absorb the words, and you're focusing on those words. So I think there's a lot of power in writing out your affirmations over and over and over.
That's what creates the mind having mastery over the being, like everything else, being the steward of your mind, the master of your mind, the mastermind.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's also a step with creation from imagination through to matter. It's also a step of that first initial transformation from energy into matter. It's a solid, I can't think of the word I want to use, but it becomes matter the moment that you write it down.
I think I'll work on that one for overcoming my body, helping my body to heal quickly from injuries.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Like my legs have been kind of resisting my wanting to walk on them, or one of them, or just having the challenges. My body just adapting with all the different kind of healing that it's needing to go through. But and I was like, I'm determined to you know, live actively anyway. I'm not going to let this stop me from, you know, living my life, you know, that as I desire.
And your wrist is quite quite badly broken, so that's obviously a writing hand.
Yeah. Yes.
That's inconvenient, but
I
just
officially got the cast put on yesterday. So
good. Well, I was glad to hear you didn't need any metal objects put in there. That's all right.
Yeah, I didn't want any metal. I just like no metal objects, and they said, you know, oh, well, it's about 50. It's not perfect, but you know, anyway. And I'm like, well, it's just the beginning. It can get better.
Yeah, I'm interested to find out if using your other hand has any creative.
Oh my gosh, you know, I did you know, have to do signatures with my non-dominant hand, my left hand. And you know, it is possible. I mean, it's like you did, I mean, it was a little slow, but I basically used the imagination, like being in a drawing, you know, when you're working on the drawing. It was a little bit challenging to try to get my direction correct, like when I was doing the little abbreviation for the and then the 3 and the S. You know,
Yeah.
It does exercise your brain.
Yeah, because you know how they say the left side of your brain controls the right side of your body. I don't know if this is true, but I've heard it, and the other side operates the other side. So I wonder if you're going to activate some parts of the right side of your brain.
I'm going to get out my calligraphy kit, and I'm going to work on my writing with my non-dominant hand.
Let us know if you have any miraculous outcomes, and we'll all start using our other hand for a while.
There we go. Write my affirmations with my left hand, even maybe.
Yeah,
that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Did you guys hear about? There was a group. They were taking people who were paraplegics, or I think it was paraplegics, and they were trying to come up with some prosthetics or whatever to help them walk. And so they had them put this virtual reality, and they had them standing with these, you know, prosthetics to help them walk. And what happened with time was that when these people were laying down,
yeah,
there was slight movement in their feet. So it was like, then the virtual reality of them seeing themselves walking, even though the experiment was for something to help them walk, all of a sudden there was like movement in some of their feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is something about wiggling the toes that sends signals to the brain.
Yeah, so, it was like one thing led to another, but that, like with you, it's like that virtual reality, and their body didn't, or their mind didn't know the difference.
Yeah.
And things started to repair themselves, so now they're starting to get some movement in their feet. I just think it's amazing, the power of the mind.
Oh, that's just an awesome example, Kathy. I like that.
Yeah.
Christos, who's your Tesla guy? What's his name?
Elon Musk.
Yeah. he, do you know what he talks about with the virtual reality? He's saying that the programs that they have already are so real that you feel like you're really there. And he says it's 1 to 1,000,000 or something, that the possibility is that we're already in a virtual reality. But the way the universe works, reality is mind anyway, so we kind of are.
What's basically described is, is the fact that the way that everything works has a structure to it. It doesn't matter where you go in the universe, there is a structure to everything. I mean, look at the Fibonacci sequence. Everything in nature has the Fibonacci sequence. And it's a set of numbers, it's mathematics. And what they basically turn around, this is not just Elon Musk, it's the science community throughout. It's just turned around. They're saying that basically you have a repetitive structure throughout the universe, which is consistent and is a constant. And it's more of a constant than gravity on Earth, because if there's certain places on Earth where gravity is not a constant. There's places where you go on Earth, the measure of gravity changes. However, there's things within the universe which are standard. Things like there is a gravity, things like cause and effect, law of attraction. It works. There's so much out there. The law of thinking, which is the first chapter in working with the law, or Holy Grail. All of these things are standard. Now, we haven't met any alien races, but I believe that even if we do, they're going to have the same standards. So we've already got a standard to go by. And when you look at physics, chemistry, biology, and everything else, it begins to actually fall apart when you consider that if we are living in a form of virtual reality, in a form of matrix, then we can alter our reality. Now, we already know that we can alter our reality. It's just that we have this block within our subconscious which says that you can only do so much. So, Kali, when you're talking about getting better and healing yourself, I truly believe that we can. And the only reason why I can't is because there's still that small block in my subconscious which says, but that's impossible because we're only human. So we can't do that. It's not possible. It's like the old man that grew a third set of teeth in his 80s because he wanted to, because he'd never heard that it wasn't possible. It's things like that. I mean, what was the other guy, the Australian marathon runner? The guy that ran across Australia in his boots, and they called the marathon shuffle after his name. It was an extended marathon, 200 miles or something, and basically nobody told him the rules. So rather than sleeping for 8 hours, he'd sleep for 2 hours, get up, and he finished in record time, which was, I think, 8 to 10 hours or something, less than the last record.
Wow.
And this happened in Australia, Nick. I can't remember the guy's name. And he was an Australian farmer. And he just heard about it and he needed the money. So he thought, I'm going to go in there and just do what I know. And all he did was, rather than run, he was shuffling along.
I remember him, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, that
Nobody
was
told
big.
him. Exactly. Nobody told him it wasn't possible. And this is why things happen, is if we could literally empty our minds of everything that we've been taught, apart from what we've learned about the power of the mind.
Christos. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Kipu.
No, go ahead.
That brings pops up something in my mind that just kind of dawned on me. Oh my gosh, I did that with my, when I grew up, knowing that I never bought into like my having a birth defect, or a birth condition called cerebral palsy. And so I did not grow up with ever, having any indication that it wasn't something that I could overcome. It was like a different. Mine was about everything. It was psychological for me. It was the different kind of anything that triggered or brought up about self-acceptance. So that was a far cry from about the condition itself. And so that was like in place of it. And so when I got the news later, when I was much more I guess I had been not as cognitive, didn't have as strong of a cognitive understanding of things when I was younger. And I was delayed, and had delayed growth and everything. But yet, when I did start to explore my world, and I got encouragement, and the academics was a way for me to be able to have something that I could hold on to that nobody could take away from me, that I was going to start questioning, especially when I went in my senior year, the first time I ever got into a regular class. And then when I heard from my birth mother years later that, about CP, and I'm like, yeah, right. I don't believe it. It's like I didn't buy into it. I never bought into it. So I didn't have it reprogrammed in me during growing up that, oh, you can't do that. I had the word I can't in my mindset, but it was more like, oh, I can't do that. It's kind of like, because there were things that were prohibited of my being able to assert my autonomy when I was very little. But, as I got older and started to challenge and question about what I was capable with my body, I wasn't about to let anything else try to stop me to do that. And then when I discovered an organization that does exactly what I was looking for help to do, something natural to help me to rebuild what the root cause. So it's incredible.
Well, it's one of those things that in the chapter it says that the only limitation that we have is the development and the use of our imagination.
Yeah.
And what he's on about is not, when you talk to people about imagination, they usually think of, what can I imagine? It's like fairy castles and beaches, and whilst you're reading Harry Potter, you can imagine the book, for example. When you're reading The Lord of the Rings, you can imagine that book, or the Sword of Shannara. And there's different books out there that give you a lot of imagination. What's his name? Terry Pratchett. His books can build your imagination exceedingly well, because there's so much information in there that your imagination gets trained on a consistent basis. So even though they're not factual books, they're fiction books. Terry Pratchett used they've got an underlying political agenda. But when you read the books, it plays on your imagination. You're building your imagination. And one of the things that I heard today was, don't just read things that's within your within your expertise. Read books that's outside your expertise. It could be anything. I mean, you could read things on I don't know, anything at all. That's completely got nothing to do with what you have, because it builds on the strength of your mind. It can build in your imagination. And when you limit yourself, you're actually closing yourself down. You, instead of going to the far edges of possibility of what you're actually capable of doing, you're closing yourself in, you're caging your limitations into such a small area that you're not achieving what you could achieve. Now, the other thing is sometimes we have underlying thoughts which we don't realize that we did. And an example is Jerry Hicks, who died from leukemia, and they said, they couldn't understand. Esther and Jerry Hicks could not understand how Jerry Hicks was dying of leukemia. And then they realized that he had a deep subconscious fear of leukemia. Like every time he went to a doctor, he was asking about it, that he was reading about it, and he had a fear about it. And then I started asking myself that question, because both my parents smoked as a child. And at the time is when they were saying, smoking kills and everything else. And I suddenly realized, I looked at it from a logical perspective. Because sometimes it's the subconscious won't accept just saying to it, oh no, I'm going to be healthy, I'm going to be healthy. You've got to take a different approach, using your imagination and saying, right, well, what is it that I've seen in my experience in the past? And this is where we go back to synthetic thought, not necessarily synthetic imagination, but using previous experience rather than creative experience. And I've looked at people that have passed away that have smoked, like my dad. He was a heavy smoker. He didn't die of cancer. Had nothing to do with the smoking. I look at my father, and it was the same with him. Heavy smoker, nothing to do with it. I've seen people that have died from from heart attacks, which has nothing to do with the smoking, but it's because they were eating excessive fat. They were not being healthy. So I've come to the determination that smoking doesn't actually cause cancer. What causes cancer is our emotional content through our life. So if you fear, or if you feel depressed all the time, if you're living in a bad environment, you're not feeling well, and the environment you're in is not, what's the word? It's not good for health, for a good, healthy body and a healthy mind. You have to leave it behind. Use your imagination if need be, like the Jewish scientist who was in Auschwitz. He used his imagination and he was free. All the time he was in Auschwitz, he was free through the use of his imagination, until he was free, until he was imagining being in New York with an American wife, until it became reality. He went to New York with an American, and he has an American wife. So our imagination is such a strong tool in getting us from point A to point B. Another example is in Bob Proctor's book, You Were Born Rich. And he talks about the guy that used to play golf has an accident, can't play golf, but he's in the hospital, he can't move. But what he's doing is that he's imagining the golf strokes, how he's hitting the golf ball. And when he actually eventually did leave the hospital, his golf game was exactly the same as that before. And he started to get better because he understood the use of his imagination. So the strength of our imagination is so extensive that in reality, we still haven't got a true grasp of it. And like Nick says, Elon Musk has mentioned this thing about visual reality, that we could, in a sense, be living in a visual reality of a created universe. I mean, even if that's the case, then the strength of our imagination is truly limitless. There isn't anything that we cannot do. Genevieve Perrin puts it very, very plainly, in the sense that our mind is is divine. Sorry, it's a seat of divinity. Whatever we can imagine, we create and provide. It's that thing. We've got to remember the feeling and the belief behind it. But if we want something, you're always putting feeling and belief behind it. And if you fear something, you are always guaranteed, 100% always putting fear and belief behind it, which is why most people experience what they don't want rather than what they want, because they imagine what they don't want. And when they do that, they've got a lot of belief, a lot of feeling behind it. And what they don't want is usually a fear that comes under the 9 motives. And when you do that, it has such an impact that it will come into your physical experience. So what we need to do and what we need to realize is our imagination has to be put to use for what we want, what we truly want, and find a motive for why we want that. And ensure that's one of the 9 motives, one of the positive, but not 9 motives, one of the positive motives. And that's what you build on. So if you want health, there's no point repeating the Emile Coué formula of every day and every day in every way I'm getting better and better if you don't believe it and you don't feel it. But if it's something that you truly want, then you're going to feel it and you're going to want to believe it. And even the want to believe, that tells you that there is some negativity there. So you need to get through that negativity by finding a very strong motive as to why. And that desire will drive you forward. You've got to make a decision to drive yourself forward and say, this is what I want. You have to imagine it and be consistent with your imagination and follow the steps in faith, in applied faith, like he says. He's given us 6 steps to follow. And those 6 steps can be for anything. It's not just about money. He tells us from the beginning, you can use these formulas, these principles for anything. But because of the depression of the time in the 2030s in the US, it was orientated around money. Whereas later on, as in the Chicago lectures, he doesn't really talk about just money. He talks about everything. He even says that money is not going to bring you happiness. It's not the seat of happiness. Money is the last thing. It is the last thing you focus on. Everything else comes first. And therefore, if you can imagine yourself at the point you want and find your motive for it, there is no reason why you can't get it. It's a lifelong.
I would like to have it try the imagination to speed up, healing and being able to have the outcomes I want.
Kelly, you've read Bruce Lipton's Biology of Belief, haven't you?
Yes, it's been a while, but yeah, I have.
I would recommend you go and read it again, because he proves from a scientific level down to the cellular level that our cells are completely influenced by our intention and our belief, without a shadow of a doubt. And that most of the genetic and degenerative diseases like heart disease, stroke, diabetes, and all of those are a production of, like Christos says, emotions, mainly stress.
Yeah.
Whether it was the mother when the child was in the womb, or whether it's yourself now. But even our genetics are changeable through our own intention. We're not we don't have to succumb to our genetics anymore. It is now known that genetics are changeable as well.
Yeah, so that would be inspiring to have something inspiring, even though, I've gone through that once before and I'm familiar with it, but it's good maybe to be reinforced.
Yeah, read it with a new intention of healing yourself.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, brilliant book.
I think I sent it to you, didn't I?
Yeah, you shared it on Skype.
The audio? Do you have the audio?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know if I have the audio for the biology of belief.
I think it was abridged,
Where's
the audio, but then there was the honeymoon effect and
that
something
one
else.
I have?
You're probably better off with the book. You've got the book, haven't you, Kelly?
Book.
The book.
Having the manually.
Yeah, and then you can underline and you can study it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I do love listening, but when I want to really study something, I'd like to have the book and make marks
like
and notes.
to it.
Agree. I have an ebook, and even that, it's like, it's not the same.
Yeah.
I think I might buy a hard copy of Think and Grow Rich and bring it with me on our cruise. Just, I have the ebook, but it's just, I don't know, there's just something different.
I'll send you a link to the one that I bought. You'll like it. You'll like it very much.
Did you post it in the Skype group?
I will do, guys. I will do.
Okay, awesome. And while we're talking about that, I remember hearing Kevin Trudeau saying that it's important to read something every day, like a book, even if it's just a paragraph. Read something every day. Reading from a book just has some magic to it.
See,
Yeah, isn't it funny? My husband was reading some advisory service, and the guy says to improve 1% a day, and I didn't quite know what he meant. But then last week we were having breakfast. I said, if you break time down into percent or whatever, every 15 minutes is 1% of your day. So I think that's what it came out to. So I figured, if you spend 1% of your day on physical, spiritual, emotional, you're doing good. So if you go for an hour walk, you've improved yourself 4% physically that day. That's how I'm looking at it.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
And it's not too much to ask when you think about it like that. It's not too much to put an hour aside for your personal development.
Yeah, that's 4%.
Yeah, it's not much, is it?
No. So that's how if we go for a walk, it's like, what? We just improved 2% physically today.
Yeah.
And 2% of our day on our physical health or whatever. Just break it down into different ones. So I'm going to do that with a hard book.
Yeah, good idea. So over on page 116, he starts to get into how intangible energy forms matter, and he starts talking about how desire is an intangible energy. And I like the way he uses the word stuff because it reminds me of the science of getting rich. And that brings all of that our learning in here.
Mm-hmm.
So all of our thoughts, ideas, our desires are all different forms of energy that exactly the way that nature works transforms into the physical through what? People, circumstances, situations, through physical means, but through being magnetized with those thoughts and desires because they are forms of energy that come together to create matter.
And then in the next couple paragraphs, he talks about the secret, which I thought was kind of interesting. The secret is not a secret.
Exactly. And he says, you can do it because it's been done before.
Mm-hmm.
Just be familiar with the laws. Just be familiar with the way energy and matter work together through focused ideas.
What page was that you were talking about?
116.
116 or 160?
116.
Okay.
116.
Yep.
All right.
About midway in the page. And he talks about nature's method. So as long as you do it in alignment with the laws of nature, you can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the energy that's available to us that we use is our emotions and our thoughts. So those two things combined is how we create our physical matter. And we've been learning how to do that. But just to bring it down to be really simple, thoughts and emotions create matter.
Yeah, that's an emotion.
Yeah. And, you know, he tells us that it's through practical means. It's not going to go poof and be there, but it's through the coincidences and the hunches and the little things that Christos was saying earlier, that if we're not looking out for them, we might miss them, that come together to create our reality.
And again, I truly think that they're always there. It's just that our focus changes when we start, you know, thinking about our desires and what we want. And there's only so much. There's so much out in the universe, bits of information, which is always there. We just can't take it all in. So by focusing on our desires, we focus on the bits of information that are applicable to those desires, and then we see it where we wouldn't see it before because we weren't focusing on that. We were letting other information, whatever it is, there's like 20 million bits of information out there and we can only see so many. So it's just a choice of what we're seeing and focusing on this stuff.
Exactly. He says on line 175, ideas are the beginning points of all fortunes.
Yeah, I was just looking at that.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we really do have more going on with our imaginations than we may realize. It's that, you know, it's like that, you know, and having these reminders, you know, just kind of, you know, reminds us basically that, you know, we have such a huge capacity with our brains to play with it. Make it just like when you, have you guys ever been on a bus where you see those billboards, those posters they usually put up? You look up at the posters, you know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
So if you ever, you know, it's kind of an interesting exercise. You know, I saw this art wall once in California. It's a similar idea where you look at the text, you look at it upside down, and you start to read it that way. And after a while of it's like training your brain to be creative, you know, a way of being able to make sense out of it. You know, and it's really fascinating what happens. It's another part of the capacity of the brain. So this artist also took a wall. So anyway, what I do is I like to sometimes will take and look up straight up at the posters and looking at it upside down, and I'm able to read it, you know, but it takes time. It takes getting used to, like, oh, okay, then you get the hang of it. But what's really remarkable is like what this artist did on this art wall was he started to get do artistic expression with his words by taking and writing backwards, upside down, one direction and the other direction, both in the reverse and the normal way. And that's really, truly the gifts of imagination, capacity.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing how when you practice that for a while and then it becomes easier?
Yeah. It just gives you more outlets to kind of explore. It's like, oh, what's possible?
And it probably opens up more neural pathways.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I guess
That's
the
what-
brain, the more we do that, the more we do creative things like that, the more plastic our brain becomes. And so then we
Yeah.
try and form neural pathways in other areas like this, getting our head around being able to create, it forms the neural pathways easier.
No, and I believe that there's like somebody that does training with people that to try and avoid like Alzheimer's and those kind of degenerative diseases by doing that exact thing. Like she tells people to practice doing things backwards, like walk backwards for a little bit every day.
Yeah.
Do lots of things exactly opposite
Yeah.
of what you would normally do, and it helps to keep your, like you said, your brain more plastic.
Yeah.
Who's
It can help
that?
those people also to have a couple teaspoons of coconut oil each day because it's wonderful for the brain. But that's great example, Cheryl. Thanks for
Yeah,
sharing.
you know, I watched a show or a seminar with this woman. I really can't remember what her name was, but it was really interesting, and I just kind of forgot about it until now.
Yeah, it's like backtracking.
Makes perfect sense.
Have you guys ever heard of eccentric training?
Oh,
That's a good way of putting it.
No, it is. You know, it's like doing a press up. The majority of people, when they do a press up, they concentrate on the pushing action, which is getting your body off the floor. Now, if you actually try doing it the other way, your muscles are never used to it. So a lot of people think that it's going to be easy. Now, I'll be honest, I'm talking from experience because I did it this week. I've started my training again, and I found this website, and they talk about it, and I thought, fine, I'll try it. You know, yes, I can do my press ups. I'm fine with my press ups. How difficult is this going to be? It was difficult because what they get you to do is to slow down with the downward movement. So instead of going down quickly and then pushing yourself up slowly, they focus on the downward movement. As in any exercise where you're working with gravity, you slow it down. And you slow it down over a 10-second period. This is, you know, doing squats, for example, same thing. And when you start doing that, your muscles begin to do something that they've never done before. You're putting them under more stress. So you begin to feel pain. And that's when I thought to myself, hold on a second. So all this time, when I've been reading all these different books and I'm trying to figure something out and I'm getting all these headaches, I wonder if a headache or these little brain pressures, these pressures within my head, are a result of, you know, something happening within the synapses and the neurons, or whatever they're called.
Yeah, and you know what? You need to drink lots of water when you're doing work with your mind. So you probably not got enough water on board.
Yeah.
When you're doing what? You drink a lot of water for when you're doing what?
When you're developing your mind, working with your mind and taking on new concepts and creating new pathways, it needs a lot of water.
Yeah.
When I do some of my trainings with the coaching college, especially NLP, they tell you, okay, it's time to have another glass of water.
Yeah.
Because you're creating a lot of new pathways.
Your brain is 85% water compared to your body, which is 80. So it's 5% more water within your skull than there is in the rest of your body. So when you start thinking, you're actually using a lot more. You're sweating, in a sense, you're sweating more from your head than you are from the rest of your body, you could say, because your brain requires the water. It's the fluid. It's the electrolyte that allows any form of connection between the synapses to actually occur. Water is an electrolyte at a very basic form. It's very light, but it works. And that's why we need water. That's why your brain, within our skull, we've got more water than in the rest of the body. And like Nick says, which is why they tell him to drink water, is for that reason. So as a result of it, I started to get more thirsty. And I thought to myself, oh, it's got to be the training, because I started training at the same time. So I was drinking more water, and the headaches were still there because I was not drinking water sufficient for thinking. And it's the same. It's like you said, you know, it's walking backwards. It's something different. Think differently. Creative thinking, creative imagination is different. And it's like with one of the processes in Ask and It Is Given. They say, you know, instead of thinking the same thought that you've thought before, think something different. So what I did was, because one of the things with Nick and I, when we started building the program, that we wrote down is seeing yourself, visualize holding the sessions, getting fast results, creating conscious competence, and having the physiology. And then, you know, I read that thing and I thought to myself, well, I'm not really thinking about the online stuff. So I started thinking about the online stuff and I started to get headaches again. And I thought, what on earth is going on with this headache thing, you know? All right, we've got humidity over here and the sun and everything else. But how can I get a brain pressure from 1 second to the next because I've changed my thoughts? And that's when it started to trigger. Something is different. I'm doing something that is not normal and is changing. So I start to get thirsty again. And I didn't put it together until now that Nick mentioned it. That is why I was getting thirsty. It's the fact that my brain was saying, I need an intake of water. And it's true. When we start doing something completely different, when we start using our imagination differently, when you start going from the synthetic to the creative, you're going to start using more. You're going to start creating different pathways, neural pathways that are going to get you to a different place a lot faster than you've been before. However, they don't create straight away. You've got to remember the neural pathways have taken all your lifetime to now to be created. Now, it's not going to take the same amount of time to create the new ones, but they need to be maintained until they become a habit. And I guess, you know, we go back to, you know, the 30 and the 90-day thing. You know, 28 to 30 days to pick up a new habit, but you don't maintain it. You need to do it for 90 days for it to be maintained. And I'll be honest, that's what I had to do with the chapter on decision. But I was reading it for 9 months, and I didn't realize that I've been reading it for 9 months. I thought I'd been reading it for a couple of weeks until I met someone who said to me, "Oh, what are you reading now?" And I said, "Oh, I'm still reading this." They turned around and said, "What, since January?" I said, "Yeah, it's September. I've been reading for 9 months." And sometimes you'll do that. You're going to find yourself in a situation where you are continuing reading the same thing again and again and again. And you don't even realize how long you've been reading it. And then all of a sudden you take on the physiology of that thought pattern.
Well, in the book, The Power of Habit, he talks about how, you know, depending on what the habit you want to change, it can take up to, I think he says something like 264 days to develop a new habit, depending. And he said, when you start a new habit, like say, for example, like someone like me, okay, say I haven't been to school in years, and say I go back to school. Well, initially to study, you know, maybe after 20 minutes, I'm going to get a headache or I'm going to get really tired. It's because I don't have those neural pathways. And he says, you know, within a month, you might be able to study like everyone else. But initially, when you're first starting, you know, you're developing those neural pathways. And so that's why you don't have the endurance. You know, it takes time because you don't have those pathways. And I found that really interesting. So when you start any new habit, if you get like overwhelmed initially, just know that with time, it'll be easier and you'll be able to study for an hour or 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good point, Kathy, about reminding yourself that if I do it, the more I do it, the easier it's going to be. So just for example, if it's walking every morning for 30 minutes and one morning it's raining or it's really cold, you don't want to get up. If I do it today, it's going to be easier tomorrow. If I don't do it today, it's going to be harder tomorrow. Or any habit that you're trying to form, if I do it this time, next time's going to be easier. It's a good way to keep yourself going. And once you get to a point where you've done it for so long, if you can just get through, and someone said it was only 3 days, they were talking about just using something simple like flossing every night. Everyone brushes their teeth twice a day, but not everyone flosses daily. Something that you might do twice a week or something like that for some people. He said if you just get through the first 3 days, the fact that you're on a roll, or he was calling it a streak, like a winning streak, once you pass those first 3 days, you won't want to miss a day again, because you've made that commitment and you've accomplished a few days in a row. So if you can just think short term, like get through a week, and then once you've gotten through the week, that week of accomplishing that will stop you from wanting to fall back, because the pain of losing what you've done for that whole week is more painful than actually doing the thing itself.
It's like me giving up caffeine.
Yes.
It's going to be
Once
easier.
you get through a week, you won't want to have a coffee, because you won't want to destroy that whole week of pain.
I don't know how long it's going to take, but, I just figured I just like the idea of not relying on a stimulant.
Yeah. Speaking of stimulants, shall we go on to talk about the kettle?
Sure.
Yes.
I'm game. Everybody else is.
I thought it was interesting that when the doctor handed the kettle and the formula over to the clerk, he must have known enough about it to say, this is worth $500, because that was his entire life savings, and that must have been a lot of money. And then the clerk added a special ingredient, and I thought to myself, well, he's used specialised knowledge, which is another principle, another success principle. So he's used his specialised knowledge as a pharmacist to put into the drink a feel-good stimulant. And wow, what a saleable product that he made, because everyone, once they had one, they wanted to keep coming back and having more.
Was that the cocaine?
That was the cocaine, yeah. And the cocaine was made illegal in 1914, but Coca-Cola kept it in their product at a small amount until 1929. And then they still use the coca leaf extract, which is also a, what do they call it? A psychoactive stimulant. And they also use cola nut extract, which is where the name comes from, Coca-Cola. And of course, caffeine. So it still has mild non-drug stimulants in it, which help keep us alert. And I was having a giggle to myself when I read the part where he talks about how here we go, in line 272, he says, now that you know the content of the enchanted kettle as a world-famous drink, it's fitting that the author confessed that a home city of the drink supplied him with a wife, also that the drink itself provides him with stimulation of thought without intoxication, and thereby it serves to give the refreshment of mind which the author must have to do his best work. So, in the chapter on, I think it's that chapter on the mastermind, when he talks about stimulation of vibration for the mind, cocaine would have been a massive vibration increaser for the mind for his creative work.
Yeah, I assumed, I didn't know all that stuff, Nicole. I just assumed that the intoxication the stimulation he was talking about was caffeine, but it wasn't.
Yeah, it's cocaine.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
What lines were that, Nicole?
272, that's that whole paragraph there. I just read that. Yeah.
Okay, there it is.
Yeah. So the stimulation of thought without intoxication. Yeah.
Refreshment of the mind, which an author must have to do his best work.
Yeah.
See, I realized what he was on about when I started thinking about the experiments that the armies tried with LSD, because they tried LSD with soldiers to find out how long they could stay awake. And it sort of worked until they started walking around and almost killing each other because they thought it was funny. But it gets to a point where when you look at it, you think to yourself, right, okay, And that's when it suddenly clicked. And it probably clicked at the same time, Nick, where I thought to myself, you know, and this is the thing, when people read the book, they're reading it in the 21st century, they're reading it as for now. They forget when the book was actually written. So when we read through it, we've got to keep in mind what has just actually happened in Napoleon Hill's life, where he is, you know, everything that he's talking about. And that's when I started thinking about Coca-Cola and what he said. And as I was walking down the street, I went to get something to eat at the local bakery. I was walking back and I actually stopped in the middle of the street and I thought to myself, he was high on coke.
Yeah.
That's right. That's what he's on about. The guy's almost a drug addict, and he probably doesn't even know it. And he's telling us about narcotics, and he's telling us about everything else. But they didn't know about this, and this is what I suddenly realized. Because it's a secret formula, nobody ever knew what was inside. They're not supposed to. It was only later, you know, when all the laws came out where you've got to tell people what's inside and everything else. So we start looking and we think, all right, that's what's inside? And you begin to realize. And I don't know, it's quite odd when you look at it. But, you know, with the kettle, what I found interesting, because when I realized, I went back to the book and read it again. And I thought to myself initially, you know, when you first read it, you think it's hard because there's a chemist who's put something extra inside. But when he said about the imagination, is that he used his imagination to put that extra ingredient because he'd already probably, maybe, he'd already planned it because he already had discussions. So he was thinking to himself, what can I add in there to make it more interesting? And when you look at the times that it was done in, we're talking about the times when, you know, you've got your medicine men and you've got the guys that are traveling salesmen with the, you know, with a liquid bottle saying that it can cure absolutely anything. Whereas this guy now turns up and he's got this black liquid and he says, drink this and you'll feel better and refreshed. So people start drinking it. And who knows, he may even have sold it as a medicine at start. But at the end of the day, it became a refreshment. And the stimulation of the mind is obvious why there was stimulation of the mind, because in small quantities, you know, I have no idea, but by the sounds of things, is exactly what I need to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The stimulation.
Yeah. It makes me wonder if Edison, Henry Ford, and any of the other ones started drinking Coca-Cola as well.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Well, I know I was going to mention earlier when they were talking about the creative imagination, I think it was Thomas Edison and probably a few of the others who would, once they had completely used their synthetic imagination and couldn't get the answers, they would have a nap next to a
I
pen.
think everything that's ever been invented has been with the imagination, or anything that anyone's ever overcome has been also included with the imagination.
Yeah. So they'd then move on to their creative imagination by having a nap and allowing the answer to come and write it down as soon as they wake up. That was a technique they used probably as well as Coke.
Well, I wonder if that's, you know, the link, you know, what we've read about the last 5 minutes before you go to sleep. You know, you make your affirmation, you give your subconscious mind a direction. You know, I wonder if these people actually knew what, you know, maybe they didn't call it the subconscious mind. Maybe they just called it, you know, another mind or whatever. But obviously they knew what they were doing, because by giving your subconscious mind that order, that direction before you go to sleep, then you get that idea when you wake up. But you've got to keep doing it again and again. Now, I've come to the point, and I'm sure you have, Nick, as well, that we now believe that whatever order we give to our subconscious mind, we will get an answer to it. And when you get to that point, you begin to realize that you don't always get an answer straight away. And it's not a lack of belief. It's because your subconscious mind has to find the necessary information to be able to bring it to you, whether it's from infinite intelligence or whether it's from information within your existing synthetic mind. And if it's not there, then it probably is still waiting for that little bit of inkling of information from your environment, which is where your instinct comes in. You know, when you get that feeling that says to you, go to the left rather than to the right, or do this rather than that, to guide you towards the point where you need to go. And, you know, to me, that kettle is a, what is it? What's the word I'm looking for? It's not the example. Not exactly illustration. It's the it's like the embodiment. It's like it's that thing that tells you that when you get someone that wants to do something and they put in that little bit of imagination with it, you know, you've got all the ingredients of everything that you want. You know, you've got your plan, and you need to put that little bit extra in. You've got to use your imagination, and it's creative imagination from where you're going to get that little bit of answer. And whether it takes, you know, going and getting a can of Coke or going for a nap, personally I prefer a nap, and to get that answer, then imagination is, you know, getting in creative imagination is the one that's going to give you the response that you need to take that step ahead.
Yeah, for the bigger thing, for something big. I see.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The list of the 10 stimuli is in the chapter on the mastery of sex transmutation on page 227, and narcotics and alcohol are number 10.
Yeah, exactly. So it makes you wonder, did he know or did he not know? Because he doesn't say anything about himself taking them, but he does mention that, you know, alcohol and narcotics are actually, the way he talks about them is they're a bad thing. So I wonder if he didn't know that there was a little bit of cocaine in his Coca-Cola at the time when he was drinking it.
It kind of looks that way because he talks about it being so good that he's able to get the stimulation without intoxication. And really, taking narcotic is the same, is an intoxication.
Yeah. Yeah.
Narcotics don't change your mind, like don't make you lose your faculties, though, do they? Like alcohol does.
It affects the brain.
Oh, yeah,
it's a stimulant, like a feel-good stimulant without disturbing your thought functions.
Yeah.
It just damages the brain cells.
Yeah. See, but back then they wouldn't have realised the damage that it could do. Because that's probably why it wasn't even illegal yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
And you know, Abraham, when they were asked about someone using marijuana to get clarity and to be more creative, the answer that was given there was the reason why you're more clear with the things that you want to do is because you've taken away all of the resistance. You're just happy, you know, all the resistance is gone, and you can just focus on the things you want, and you're getting those hunches and ideas coming in left, right, and centre. And what the answer there was, fine, if that's what you want to use, that's fine. I'm not saying not to do that, but make sure you practice losing the resistance and tuning in, being, what does she say, tuned in, tapped in, turned on, without the use of drugs. Well, you know, just as you as a person yourself needs to be able to do that without the help. But she said, if that's what you're doing for now, fine.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And I have to agree. I'm pretty sure that I've gotten some ideas or clarity when I've had a few glasses of wine that I maybe wouldn't. And I think to myself, why? Why do I get those ideas now? And that's exactly what it is. Because you're happy, you're not thinking about resistance.
Exactly. All the resistance gets left behind.
Right.
Mm.
Awesome.
Mm. Yeah.
Let's go get drunk.
Yeah, well, have 2 or 3, but don't have
10.
Let's get really creative.
creative metaphor.
And then you look at what you created the next day and go, what was
Oh
I
my
thinking?
God.
Then I'll go back to caffeine.
I don't touch that stuff.
I think
Who was it?
I think first thing in the morning, like, someone worded it, and I thought this was interesting. They say the morning, like, it's a really good time to study when you first wake up. And someone said it's because your conscious mind isn't awake yet.
Yeah, and
It
also
has-
because the resistance hasn't kicked in fully yet.
I find
What
freedom
hasn't?
for
Your resistant thoughts.
Yeah. So it's like, when you first wake up, before your conscious mind, before you start going through your daily routine or whatever, just lay in bed and listen to, that's what I'm going to, what I do some mornings is I just put tape on and I just, on my phone and put the earplugs in to not disturb my husband and just listen for a while I kind of wake up. So
yeah, it's a good time to do visualization of your goal too, because you don't have the resistance there. You're having a good vibration around it rather than having the resistance against it.
Yeah. I like what Peggy said. It's just like, picture your goal has been achieved. How do you feel?
Yep.
And I love that, visualizing that life. Or somewhere else, because sometimes people get confused with visualizing, so it's like daydream. Everyone knows what daydreaming is. So it's like just daydream that, you're whatever you want to be. Kind of cool.
Yeah. What's his name? I think his name's Vision or something like that, from Mind Academy.
Yeah, Vision.
Yeah. And in his book, The Code of an Extraordinary Mind, he talks about how he has experimented with different types of fine whiskey for his.
I didn't get to that yet.
Oh, whoops, sorry. I won't say anymore.
That's okay.
But the way he says it is like, it's well known. This is just what us successful businessmen do. And this is why we have the decanter of fine whiskey in our office, because of creative power. He doesn't say that, but that's kind of the way it comes across. Is like, to me, when I read it, that this is just, the way it is. So he's experimented with different ones that would work best for him.
So what phase of, there's the alpha, beta, theta, delta, mind phases. Which one is it when you're like really receptive?
I don't know them off the top of my head, but it's the one that we're in from childhood up until about the age of 6.
I think it's theta.
So, I think, isn't that like with meditation, whether you focus on your breathing, the whole idea is to relax yourself into getting your mind in that zone, that theta or whatever zone is. So maybe they do it with alcohol. It might just be a quicker way to get there instead of like working on calming themselves down, or what I mean, through breathing or meditation or what have you. They just do it with a shot of whiskey.
Yeah.
And just relax.
And the ideas start coming.
Yeah.
See, the thing is with meditation is that when you meditate every day, your sense of relaxation becomes a part of you. Yeah. Whereas if you try to, or when you do it through a stimulant, it's not something that is maintained. It's something that's like a short, sharp shock.
Yeah, it's going to wear off.
Yep.
Yeah. Whereas when you
Yeah.
meditate, is something which you're bringing your body and your mind together, and by continuous practice, you're bringing yourself to a different level, but consistent. So you don't actually need a any form of stimulant to get you to the point you want. However, when you get to that point and you actually need that boost for something else, and you do have a stimulant like a drink of wine or a drink of whiskey, then you'll find you're going to get yourself to a greater jump. But that's my personal opinion, because when I started meditating from last week, and I've already seen a difference in myself in that I feel a lot more calm and I feel a lot more serene. And even though that's part of my affirmations, it's come round very, very quickly, because there's a lot of things that just don't bother me anymore. I'm beginning to realize things, and rather say, why am I thinking that way? I'm saying, that's fine, let it be, it's part of you, accept it, move on. And I did that about 2 days ago, and I thought to myself, where on earth did that just come from? And obviously I looked at it, I thought, it's fine, let it go, it's part of you, move on.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, and that's just meditation, once a day, 15 minutes a day. And
1%.
I'll be honest, yeah, I'm not very good at it. I'm still sort of finding myself drifting and thinking and doing things, but at the same time, there comes within those 15 minutes, every now and then, I get this nodding sensation where I'm almost falling asleep.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what is it? You know, it's like having a micro sleep. When you're so tired and you suddenly jerk yourself.
Like
Yeah, exactly. And you think, what just happened? And you're falling asleep. But you're not falling asleep. You're fully awake, and it's your body jerking. And after reading us and it is given, they say that when you get to a given points within your meditation, you'll find that your body begins to react in different ways. When we used to do it in martial arts, my sifu used to say to me that eventually, when you go into a really deep meditation, you'll find that your body will respond to any form of attack without you having to open your eyes, because it feels the environment, it feels the aura, and someone is entering your aura from your chi, because your chi is your energy, and it's just another word for energy, really. And because it's all around us, with meditation, with deeper and deeper meditation, you get to create that barrier with your energy. So if anybody enters it, even when your eyes are shut, regardless of what it is, whether it's a butterfly or a human being, you can feel it. And this is before you even get touched. Now, there's times when people say, you know, you're fast asleep and you wake up just before a door opens because someone's about to open it. That's exactly what that is. You've reached that point during your sleep. Whereas what we're aiming to do is reach that through meditation, because through meditation, we're bringing it forward into our conscious and everyday life.
Yeah, and I think that's the point that Esther Hicks was making, that, you know, okay, use a stimulant from time to time if you want to. It's not going to do any harm, but master it yourself is best.
Exactly. Yes, Nate. Quite right, Mother. Quite right.
Well, we've been at it for 2 hours.
Yeah. I'm glad we halved the chapter.
No
Yeah.
kidding.
All right. Does anyone else have any ideas or comments they want to add before we finish up?
I'm glad we're back.
Yeah, me
Yep.
too.
I'm going to be gone the next 3 weeks. I'll be on
holiday time.
Yep.
You must be so excited.
You know, it hasn't hit me yet because we booked it almost like 2.5 years ago.
that's
So I'm
right.
just like, we're leaving next Saturday. It's like, we really should think about what we're going to bring, honey. We're both like, yeah, but we'll be excited once I'm madly trying to pack.
Yeah.
Just take swimsuits. That's it. Just take your swimsuits. Don't worry about the rest.
Well, it's going to be kind of cold. We're going to Northern Europe.
Oh yeah, you said. Yeah, take some warm clothing.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's where I'm not enthusiastic yet. Is because I look at the weather and I'm thinking it's kind of that in between. It's like in the 40s in the morning and it's like maybe in the 60s in the afternoon. So I'm warm-blooded. So it's like, what do I bring? There's a washing machine, so I'm just going to bring a week's worth of clothes and just wash it. And it's like, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm just not going to stress about it. If I need a T-shirt, I'll buy it.
There you go.
There's the attitude. Mm.
Yeah, so I'll be here for Tuesday's call. And then
Good.
I'll
We're doing
listen
health,
to,
aren't we?
what's that?
We're going to do health.
Yep.
Right.
And I'll listen to the recordings while I'm gone.
Good.
Okay.
So you guys I'll see you guys in about a month. Wow, I hate almost saying that, but yeah.
Have a blast.
Yeah, I will. I know I will. It's just, the work that needs to get done before I leave. That's like, ugh. But I'm
Now,
looking.
when do you leave?
I leave Saturday, a week today.
Okay.
We don't get back to the 22nd.
Mm.
That's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to going to Reykjavik. So that'll be interesting. It'll be kind of cold, but getting in that hot spring.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So you guys, good luck with the readings, and I'll catch up with you guys in a month.
All right.
Bye.
Have a great time.
Hey, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.